Welcome everyone. Welcome to this morning's session, 7 o'clock. Thanks for all joining me. I wasn't sure how many would come or if anyone would come, so I assumed that maybe the only people up at this time would be on their way to work. So welcome to this particular session. Now we're at the full moon, and it's also the feast of the Annunciation, which in the old Roman calendar was actually the spring equinox. Now, as you may be aware, the spring equinox, as it's calculated now, happened about 5 days ago on the 20th. Now, I've got a course running in Wales at the moment, so this is actually part of the course. And we went on a wonderful full moon walk last night around Wales, and thankfully we could see the moon just before the clouds came over and covered her. But it was something that we really noticed was the strength of the moon shadow as we were walking back with the moon behind us, and really the way in which the moon is the one that actually reflects the light of the sun back to us. And if you think about it, when you're looking at a full moon, if you draw a straight line between yourself and the full moon, you could continue that line behind you and it would eventually go down to meet the sun. So we're at this middle place between the sun and the moon when there's a full moon. Now, with that in mind, let's get on to the slides. Now, this beautiful image by Frangelico shows that moment of the Annunciation, also known as Lady Day, as well as the Annunciation. That's the other name for it. And as I mentioned, the spring equinox was associated with March 25th because it was 9 months prior to December the 25th, which of course was the birth of Christ, but also the winter solstice. It's really talked about now, interestingly. This went together with the idea that John the Baptist was born at the summer solstice on June the 24th, and we still call June the 24th Midsummer's Day. And on Midsummer's Eve, June the 23rd, there'd be a very big festival throughout Europe. And so this is part of when the calendar was, I suppose you could say, directly interrelated to the Christian feasts, which it's not so easy to sort of see now because there's a few days of difference. Now I'm going to talk about the cosmology of Earth in relation to the equator and the equinox, and how that also shows itself within the design of the cathedral here at Wells, where I currently am. Let's imagine that we have, you see these white dotted lines, they're the polar axis of Earth. So I'm going to turn the polar axis so that it's at the correct angle in relation to what could be called the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the orbital plane of the Earth around the sun. So if you have a horizontal line here, then that is the orbital plane of Earth around the sun. Now let's put another axis in here so that I can put in this angle, 23.4 degrees. Now that's the amount of tilt that the Earth has. And this is what we find used in the design of the nave at Wells Cathedral. Now I'll come to that in a second. This image is from Robin Heath's book, Sun, Moon, Earth. Now, as you can see, he's got these two right-angle triangles, one that's 7 by 3 and the other one that's 30 by 13. And he's shown that in relation to this axial tilt of Earth. The one on the right is more directly accurate for the axial tilt at the moment, 23.4 degrees, if you look up at the angle here. And 7 by 3 is really quite accurate too. It's just very slightly different, 23.2 degrees. But this is the very simple arithmetic that's used to form the nave of the cathedral at Wells, because the nave is essentially an image of planet Earth, where the journey of ascent begins. Now, here are these same triangles in my own book, The Cosmos in Stone. You see the images on the left, they're replicating the images from Robin Heath's book. And then these ones here on the right, I've changed the particular positioning of the triangles. So rather than using, well, the polar axis going through North Pole and South Pole, on this one, I've used the equator. Sorry, the equator, this one here, the equator, and then the dotted line is the ecliptic that I was describing. Now I'll come my way round to this, just this diagram should make it a bit easier to see. So the dotted line, that is the orbital plane of Earth around the sun, known as the ecliptic. As we see it from Earth, it's the path of the sun through the sky during the day. Now, Earth's equator, as you can see, is tilted by that 23.4-degree angle, and this is what creates the seasons. Now, I'll talk a little bit about the symbolism of eternal spring shortly. But before that, let's look at how this shows itself in the design of the cathedral. Now, the nave is the area on the left as we're currently looking at it. So it's the beginning part of the cathedral, the place of the people. Nave often relates to the boat as well, the boat that carries the congregation. Now, as you can see, I've put a circle around the rectangle, which marks out the nave. And this rectangle is actually 13 by 30. So one of those triangles that I was showing you a little bit earlier can be defined as being this here. If we take one of those diagonals, and we have the right angle triangle or the other one going this way. So what we therefore have is angles of 23.4 degrees. And what this means is that if you fade in an image of planet Earth, the north wall and the south wall of the nave are essentially the Tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. But very importantly, the middle path of the cathedral, the middle path is the one that relates to the equator and therefore the equinox. So you have this middle path between the light and the dark of the solstices, which forms that middle path of the cathedral. Now, this is such a key symbolism in relation to all that's going on in the design of the cathedral. And of course, the equinox, in Christian terms, as well as relating to the Annunciation, it also relates to Easter. Now, Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. So the spring equinox happened on the 20th, 5 days ago. Last night was the first full moon after the equinox, and so the coming Sunday is Easter Sunday. That's how the calculation is made. So the equinox is directly related to Easter. Now, in this sense, this is what we seem to have in the design of the cathedral, because the Lady Chapel up here has geometry in it. It has this pentagon, these 3 edges of the pentagon and 5 edges of this octagon, which actually makes the shape of the Lady Chapel. And these are the 2 symmetries plotted out by planet Venus, the morning star. So at the east end of the cathedral, you actually have the resurrection associated with the Lady Chapel, as well as also the Annunciation associated with the Virgin Mary, because the chapel is actually a Lady Chapel dedicated to the Virgin Mary. So the side aisles could be described as the solstitial pathways, and they lead up to these 2 chapels here, which are dedicated to solstitial saints. So one is a chapel of John the Baptist, who is midsummer, and the other one is a chapel of St. Stephen, who is midwinter. Now, St. Stephen's association with midwinter comes in his patronage of horses, which is nothing to do, that's not in the Bible. That's a winter solstice association that has become associated with St. Stephen's Day. It sort of came into Christianity early on. So you have these solstitial pathways leading up to these 2 figures, who are also the first martyr after the Passion and the last martyr before the Passion. So you also have this biblical connection with these 2 saints as well. Stephen's known as the proto-martyr, as in that he's the first martyr after Christ's Passion, and John the Baptist is the final one before the Passion. And so the Passion itself is that middle path, which is also the equinoctial middle path of balance between light and dark, which is the only one that actually leads into the Lady Chapel at the East End to the resurrection. Now, this is another page from my book. Now, as you can see, when we have the solstice, we have the Tropic of Cancer being the part of Earth that's closest to the sun. And so hence the month, the zodiacal month of Cancer begins on the summer solstice. This is a Northern Hemisphere perspective that I'm giving here. The Tropic of Capricorn is the part of Earth that's closest to the sun on the winter solstice. But on the equinox, we have that middle path of the equator. So you can see how that works within the design of the cathedral, facing east towards the rising sun. Now, I want to talk just very briefly about the idea of eternal spring because it has an actual cosmological description, which comes specifically into John Milton's Paradise Lost. And it's to do with this equator ecliptic angle. Now, this idea of eternal spring, it's mentioned by Ovid in his Metamorphoses in relation to the Golden Age. So it's the ideal state, you could say. And it's when there isn't a seasonal movement, there is just eternal spring. So we're in a constant state of spring rather than going down into winter and then up into summer. Now, this ideal state is the state from which Persephone was abducted by Hades, the underworld. And so you have this idea that she begins in this ideal state of balance, but then she's taken down into the underworld. And the resolution of the story of Persephone is that eventually she's allowed to spend some of the time of the year above the ground and some below the ground. So rather like this idea that you have this movement from the summer solstice to the winter solstice with these tropics within the nave, you have this fluctuation rather like the tick-tock of a pendulum. So the pendulum begins to swing when she's taken from this ideal timeless state of eternal spring, where the pendulum is just in a still, timeless state of being. And she's brought into this movement between the seasons. Now, this idea of eternal spring came to be associated with Eden, the Christian idea of Eden, with poets such as Dante and John Milton. So, for instance, in Dante's Divine Comedy, when he first reaches Eden, the first person he meets is a woman called Matilda, whom he associates with Persephone in eternal spring. Now, in John Milton's Paradise Lost, he actually describes Earth's equator being level with the ecliptic before the fall. And so you would have a constant equinox. So there'd always be an equinox, and I suppose you could say a constant spring equinox. But by analogy, there would also be a constant autumn equinox, which is then associated with harvest and uh, that sort of fruitful time of year. Right, let's start drawing. Um, I shall sort out my camera. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I wasn't sure if anyone would come, actually. I thought it was a bit too early for the United States, but a bit too, or a bit too, yeah, but I thought I wasn't sure if anyone would come, so thanks for all coming. I'll just switch my drawing camera on. I'm still a bit hazy in my head. I've only half woken up. Right, okay. Now I'm actually working on a piece of A4, and as you can see, it's turned into landscape orientation. I've got this white paper in the background because it alters the light setting on my camera. But as I say, only a piece of A4, that's all you're going to need. Right, I've turned the paper into portrait just very briefly because I'm going to measure 4 inches. I'm going to measure 4 inches from there to here and make a little mark. What I'm actually working my way towards is drawing a horizontal line across the page here, which is 4 inches up from the bottom of the page. So I'm just going to turn my page this way and mark 4 inches from here to here, make a little mark. Just realized I need my glasses on. Right, so having got those two marks, 4 inches up from the bottom of the page, I'm going to draw a line across. Now, what we're going to draw here is actually the well, we're going to draw the 7 by 3. That's the simpler of those two angles. We're going to draw the rectangle, draw an image of Earth with the Tropics of Cancer and Capricorn and the equator. Nice simple diagram. So having drawn this line 4 inches up from the bottom of the page, I'm now going to make a dot or a little mark on my line. I'm going to just to center it within the page. I'm doing 3 3/4 inches. So I've got a little dot there at 3 3/4 inches. And then I'm making another mark 4 inches along from that first mark that I made. So you should have these two little marks here. So like I say, 3 3/4 inches from the edge of the page to here, and then 4 inches along that. And that just centers it within the page nicely. Right, I'm going to draw a couple of circles, and the radial measurement that we need is 1.5 inches. Right, with my compasses at that radial measurement, I'm going to draw a semicircle on this side, from this far edge of the circle on the right, and now the equivalent thing on the left. Oh, and I see someone's just asked a question about the equinoxes. It was the change from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. That's why the dates have changed slightly. The old Roman calendar is the Julian calendar. Right, so as you can see, I've just put in these crosses for creating a bisector line. I should have described what I was doing there. I was too busy talking about the equinoxes. I'll describe it on this one here. So point of the compasses goes into the other side of the circle from where we've put the semicircle, and we mark like so, with the radial measurement on the compasses. And then using these 2 points, we get the cross above, and these 2 points, we get the cross below. Right, so having got these crosses, one above and one below each circle, I'm now going to put in the now I'm going to use the north and south point of each circle now to give myself one of these. Just one petal required rather than the usual two. Now my cat is hovering, just waiting to jump on my diagram at the appropriate time. Now what you should find that you have here, between the two tips of these two petals, it should measure 3 inches. And between the tips of these two petals, it should measure 7 inches. And so you have the 7 by 3. This is how we've generated the dimensions of the rectangle. Now, the final thing that we need to do is to go between the tips of the petals diagonally like this, because we need to give ourselves the center of the Earth, as you'll see. And so now I'm going to use the point on the compasses to mark the center and the 4 corners, by which I mean this central point here, and then the 4 corners, as in the 4 tips of these petals. I'll circle them just so you've got a record of the ones. So these ones here, I'm also going to put another couple in to get the equator. So I'm going to also put holes in these ones too. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And once we have that, we can turn paper over, and I doubt you can see the little points that I have here, the little holes in the paper, but I'll describe how I'm working with them. It's probably worth putting yeah, it's worth putting in the equator first. So let's put in the middle path first. which is probably the best path to be emphasizing. We really need to find the middle path at the moment. Everything is in antagonistic opposites, which isn't really the true state of soul. It's something we fall into when we forget our true self. So that line I've just drawn there is going between these 2 points here. So those middle ones between. Now, the reason why I've done that first is that there is a reason why I've done that first. It's just sort of slightly easier to see, because what I'm now going to do is put in the rectangle between the tips of those 4 petals. And if I'd have put that line in first, I'd have drawn over the hole in the paper there. So that's why I put the equator in first, while I could see the little pierced holes in the Now, having said that, hopefully you can still see the hole in the center, which that one there. So there is the image of Earth with the equator ecliptic rectangle. And put in these dots here. Now these dotted lines, they are the angle of the ecliptic, which is, and so if you followed one of these dotted lines out 93 million miles, you'd get to the sun. Now, in this particular instance, like I say, this is the simpler of the 2 rectangles, 23.2 degrees. Obviously, at the moment, it's 23.4 degrees. That's the axial tilt of Earth. 850 years ago, when Wells Cathedral was built, the axial tilt was 23.5 degrees. So it's changed that much, changed by 1/10 of a degree in the last 850 years. It's an exceedingly long cycle. Oh, here we go. The cat is now about to jump onto my diagram, so be prepared to see the fur. So this is the Tropic of Cancer, and this is the Tropic of Capricorn. Is the equator. Three by 7. Okay, everyone, I have the cat on me now, just to keep her off my diagram. Um, I'm going to switch my slides back on again because I want to uh, make an announcement about a new set of courses that I'm going to be running. Now, starting from Michaelmas this coming September, I'm going to spend a year running a set of 8 courses, which I'm calling the Wheel of the Year. And it fits in with a lot of what I was saying earlier about the solstices and the equinoxes and their associations with various of the Christian feasts. So these 8 points in the year, which of course they happen in other cultures as well, because they're really just the solstices, the equinoxes, and the midpoints between those 4 corners of the year. Now, these 8 courses, they'll all be in-person courses here in the city of Wales, in which we'll do various, as well as geometry drawing and looking at the design of the cathedral. We'll also do various arts and crafts that are associated with, or which are appropriate to the particular point in the year that we're studying in. So, for instance, at Michaelmas, we'll do a glass painting of St. Michael, and we'll also have a labyrinth. At All Hallows, will be well, that'll be an interesting one. We're going to stone carve a monument of some kind. So it'll be stone carving something by which there can be a remembrance of someone who's no longer alive. Now, it could be someone that you know, someone who you're related to, or it could be a mythical figure or a religious figure, but just someone who's no longer alive. So in the sense of remembering the ancestors, you could say. With Christmas, the ground of the year, we'll do some geometric floor tiling, probably Cistercian geometric floor tiling, like the ones at Byland Abbey in North Yorkshire. And at Candlemas, I think it'd be candle making. That might develop as time goes on. And a labyrinth as well, sort of moving into early spring. Now, Lady Day, so this time next year, my friend Nick Durnan will help people to carve a medieval stone rose. The rose, of course, being the symbolically associated with the Virgin Mary. And then for May, I've also put Gidereles in there, which is a Middle Eastern festival for that time of year, because I want to emphasize the association with the Green Man and St. George. So we'd be stone carving a green man at that particular one. And then at St. John in Midsummer, there'd be gilding an image of the sun. And then the last one will be an exhibition, probably some sort of artwork as well. I'm not sure about that one. That's quite a while to come yet. And there'll be a labyrinth at that one, and then the Abingdon Labyrinth, which is a labyrinth associated with the Feast of the Assumption. And I'm hoping that we could construct and walk that while actually singing Gregorian chant. That's what I'm hoping. That's the plan. So this is all sort of gradually in progress, but this is the plan of the course. And if you want to do all of the courses, the cost is it's around about £300 a course, but it's possible to come and just do some of them as well, because maybe not everyone can commit to all 8 of them. Right, so that's my next plan coming up, and you're welcome to come to that. You can get in touch on that email address there, wiseinwales@gmail.com. Now, I'd better get on to teaching the course in Wales, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. So I hope thanks for coming on. I didn't think anyone was going to come along to this one. Just wait, in May, there's one at about 3 in the morning, so I'm sort of thinking that there won't be anyone coming to that one, but I'll do it anyway, it doesn't matter. So thanks for coming, and I shall see you at the next one. Oh yeah, actually, I just need to share my screen again. I haven't put in there is one more frame to show, and that's the next date. So April the 8th, and this will be at 7 o'clock in the evening. So again, hopefully a good time for people in this time zone. But everyone, wherever you are, welcome. So do come along again to the next one. And I shall see you then. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
You, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Have a good day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you,
Bye
Tom.
bye.